This morning on The Dish, the Big Easy meets the Big Apple. Turns out some of the finest Cajun and Creole cuisine can be found not just in New Orleans, but right here in New York. That's what our Jamie Wax discovered, and he's with us to share it all. Jamie, good morning.
Good morning, my friend. And you know that it's legit if you and I like it. Chef Eric McCree's restaurant, Filé Gumbo Bar, is not far from the southern tip of Manhattan. But step inside and you're transported even farther south, right down to the Gulf Coast, with the fantastic flavors and even the sounds of Louisiana.
So when we get an order, we'll get a ticket, and we're going to create everyone's bowl as they wish.
As a Louisiana native, the last thing I would expect to be doing in New York's Tribeca neighborhood.
Like a bartender, you're going to do a 4 count of the stock. And then you can use your spatula, and we're just going to mix that all together.
Is making gumbo.
So when it reaches the desired consistency, hold the bowl with your left hand, and you're going to pull and slowly tilt it into the bowl.
Ooh, this is the dicey part.
Yeah.
With a chef who grew up in Idaho, no less.
And you kind of have a chef's table experience.
But that's exactly what I found myself doing with Chef Eric McCree at his gem of a restaurant, Filé Gumbo Bar.
Were you chasing for the perfect bowl of gumbo every time?
Absolutely. It's because also everyone's perfect bowl is different, depending on where you're from, your background, the region. And so here, because we can make it to order, we can modify a little bit. Some people think that only gumbo has shrimp and crab, or you say it's just chicken and andouille. So we can make that, and we can bring that same comfort to them each and every time.
McCree started his career as an audio engineer, but touring with concerts and productions always led him back to his true love.
As you traveled the world, did you keep being pulled in by food?
Absolutely. Any place I went, I would spend more time after or before show eating local cuisine and like going into the kitchen if I could and like seeing what they were doing. But I was just so enthralled by how food brought cultures together. It's just the pork chop you're waiting for, but you can send the rest.
And when he got to Louisiana, he found his heart's culinary home.
I really truly believe Cajun and Creole food is American cuisine. It is food that came out of the birth of America. There's so many different cultures that came together that create this cuisine that I just find is the perfect marriage. I just decided this is what my second passion is going to be, highlighting this food here in New York.
And that's just what he's doing, serving up his delicious spins on Louisiana Classics with Louisiana ingredients, like crawfish etouffee with crispy okra on top.
It's not fried with any batter. It's just okra put in the fryer and finished with Cajun seasoning and salt.
A mixed sausage plate featuring Louisiana charisse, andouille, and boudin with Creole mustard. Shrimp and grits with smoked Cajun tasso.
This is our brunch specialty, shrimp and grits, and a red-eye gravy.
Wow, this looks gorgeous, these grits.
Char-grilled oysters.
Grilling the lemon is a nice touch.
And you want to make sure that when you're cooking it, they're actually charred.
Yes.
A lot of times they are cooking it under, but you want that grill taste.
And crawfish bread.
The bread we also source from Louisiana. It's the Leimenheimer bread.
Yep, Leidenheimer, yes, one of the greats.
Absolutely.
I have to say, all of these dishes feels like someone cooking from their heart with a lot of love for Louisiana food. It's just really fresh takes on things.
Yeah.
And for dessert, bourbon butter bread pudding.
Gotta have the bourbon. And it's just a browned butter sauce poured over it. And it's just divine.
You had me at bourbon. You made me fall in love with butter. And also the crispiness of it.
Importantly, there's also a gumbo named after his grandfather, who inspired his love of cooking.
His name was Aubry, but they called him Tiny. Aubry was not a little man.
He was not. He was a large man, but also a large spirit. Everyone knew when he was around, huge presence. And so that's why we wanted to name the gumbo after him. It's because it is a large bowl of gumbo, and it has presence.
Tiny's all-in gumbo.
All in.
And what does all-in mean to you?
Anything he did, it was all in, 100%, and he went and found and accomplished his dreams. And so that's what I really believe all in is.
And though he respects the traditions behind the food he serves, McCree feels it's also important to add a personal flair to each dish he creates.
So should gumbo evolve?
I think gumbo should definitely evolve, because I think that's how it was created. But I think there's certain things that have to stay true. It has to be a rich roux. And the art of making a roux is something that will evolve, but it's still the color, the richness, the flour. There is basics of a gumbo.
What was the moment when you looked out and thought this is actually going to work?
The moment was in January. We were open for several months, and finally, I was like, what is missing? And it was the spirit of the jazz. Jazz is so entwined into the culture in Louisiana, having a trio in the back just bringing in that spirit. I brought that in, and then from that point, now it feels like I'm walking into a New Orleans restaurant. And I think that was when I was like, oh, it's gonna work, it's working.
Are you all good here with this?
Chef McCree says there are similarities in his former experience dealing with sounds and his current one dealing with flavors.
For me, as an audio engineer versus like a musician, as an audio engineer in music, you're mixing tones. You're adding depth to the music by using effects or reverb. And so the way I approach it is I'm doing the same thing, but I'm doing it with spices. I'm doing it with textures. I'm doing it with salts, acid.
And like his grandfather, Eric McCree has gone all in on this endeavor.
What do you think Tiny would think of what you've done?
I think he would be very happy. He was a very quiet man, but you always knew he was thinking, and he would just probably sit in the back and just smile and be like, that's my grandson.
Does that make you proud to think of that?
Very much so.
What a great guy and what a great chef. You know, sometimes, as we said, it takes an outsider to appreciate things.
What'd you bring us?
Well, so I brought you a lot because you complain a lot that I don't bring enough food, but we've got the bourbon butter bread pudding, we've got shrimp and grits with smoked Cajun tasso, we've got Tiny's all-in gumbo, and we've got a filet sour here that is delicious that he calls a porch sipper.
Spice on this is fantastic.
This urban, what is it called? Urban?
Bourbon butter bread pudding.
Bourbon?
Yes, you're a fan.
Unbelievable.
Road trip to Tribeca to get more.
Look, you know, when I heard there was a
make it.
chef from Idaho cooking Louisiana food, I was skeptical. He's
Fantastic.
the real thing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.